the International Conference on Gender Inclusion in National Human Rights Institutions, happening from the 3rd September to 5th September in Kathmandu, Nepal. We are truly honored to have with us distinguished guests, dignitaries representing 19 NHRIs from the Asia-Pacific region. We are equally pleased to have with us distinguished guests from government, various embassies, our valued development partners, and all our collaborating partners of the NHRC Nepal. My name is Saniksha Bade. I am a human rights officer at NHRC Nepal, and on behalf of NHRC Nepal, I extend my heartfelt thanks to the Asia-Pacific Forum, UNDP Nepal, UN Women, and UNFPA for their valuable support. I also thank all the distinguished dignitaries present here. Your presence here highlights the significance of our shared commitment to advancing gender equality in the national human rights institutions. Yesterday, on the first day of the conference, we had a series of insightful presentations and panel discussions focusing on how the national human rights institutions can enhance gender equality within their internal structures and operations. The discussions aim to provide actionable recommendations and strategies and foster deeper understanding of how NHRIs can effectively incorporate the gender perspective into their organizational culture and operational strategies. Today, our discussions will be focused on how the national human rights institutions can enhance their external operations by incorporating gender perspectives into their external works. Our discussions will cover topics like integrating gender perspective in policy and legislative reviews. Next topic will cover the strategies for amplifying the external works of the NHRIs. And lastly, we will discuss the role of NHRIs in advancing intersectionality within the Asia-Pacific region. As we continue with the engaging discussions for today, I am pleased to introduce our first panel discussion. The session will focus on integrating gender perspectives in policy and legislative review by the national human rights institutions. Chairing this session is Justice Dr. Anand Mohan Bhattarai, the former Justice of the Supreme Court of Nepal. Facilitating this discussion is Mr. Jerald Joseph, the former Commissioner of the Commission of Human Rights of Malaysia. Our distinguished panelists include Honorable Vijaya Bharathi Sayani, the Acting Chair of the National Human Rights Commission of India, Honorable Hari Kurniawan, the Commissioner at the Indonesian National Commission on Human Rights, Honorable Marilia, ex-CDO da Costa, the Deputy Provedor for Human Rights at Provedor for Human Rights and Justice of Timor-Leste, and Ms. Erica Powell, the Acting Director of Sex Discrimination Team at the Australian Human Rights Commission. I welcome all the esteemed speakers to begin the discussion.
Good morning, colleagues. Good to see you back on your feet. Thank you to our MC, who's re-energized after a rest. And we have here with us the 4 panelists. And I think to start us off, we have our chair. I just got to know him. Has a very illustrious career in the justice system. Just recently retired, so he's fresh and all spheres. But I used the word just now, he has seen it all in the growth and development of Nepal from all points of view. So I think we're very happy to have him start us off as the chair. Over to you, Justice Dr. Anand Mohan Bhattarai.
Good morning to you all, distinguished panelists and my facilitator, Mr. Joseph. It's so good to be here with you this morning. Liliji was talking about yesterday's program. I was there at the inaugural and the session that followed. but I miss your evening session. And I hope that since this is a festival time, our foreign delegates have learned a bit of Nepali style of dancing yesterday night. That's what I think. So hopefully you had a very pleasant stay in Kathmandu and had very good time here. And coming to the session, how we'll do is, I'll first give my take on the subject and then pass on to Joseph and the panelists. They will give their view on the topic, and then that will be followed by Q&A. And finally, I'll give the summary, whatever I can collect from your very extensive presentation. That's what I would like to do. And I'm told we are given 1.5 hours for this session. First of all, thank you, organizers, for inviting me to the conference and asking me to chair this session, titled Integrating Gender Perspective in Policy and Legislative Review by NHRIs. As I mentioned, we have very distinguished panelists with us. And yesterday, Liliji was asking us to also speak about yesterday's session. I would bring to your notice two very contrasting views that came up during the inaugural. While Right Honorable Prime Minister was very enthusiastically recounting the achievement of Nepal in terms of inclusion, gender inclusion and protection of women, the representative from the UNDP was giving her view on the challenge that we still have to soldier in realizing goal number 5 of SDG. This is where we are. This is where we are. Yesterday, we also talked about pluralism. The first session, we talked about pluralism. Pluralism, to my mind, is an aspect of liberal democracy and pertains to representation and where multiple narratives are possible and multiple point of views are taken to the national parliament. It is also a perspective that everybody keeps within himself. I was talking to Honorable Mir Thakur this morning during the breakfast that what democracy caters, what democracy really propagates is a system where it allows you to say no or doubt your perspective, and also gives you a situation or environment where you can say, you can ask question. And for asking question to the establishment, you are not punished. You are not put into jail. This is the beauty of pluralism. This is the aspect of pluralism. So much important for democracy and for the protection of human rights. This is what I want to just add on to yesterday's session. We are talking about human rights. They are very crucial and very important for us, not because that they are enshrined in our constitution or laws, or also not because they have now slowly and gradually percolated to our legal system. They are important because human rights violations are occurring day and night within our families, within our societies, in the state institution or outside of state institutions. And there is so much to work on protection, respect, and helping people to realize human rights. Therefore, the session we are talking about the role of NHRIs is so crucial. And here we are talking about the review, possibility of policy review, and lobbying for policy review, and trying to improve the ground situation. As a judge, as my facilitator introduced me, and many of you from Nepal know me, I have spent pretty long time in the judiciary. almost 31 years as a judge. How we try to stamp out discrimination. Our journey, in fact, started with our initiative to stamp out discrimination. Discrimination in the policy, discrimination in law, and discrimination in practice. We started with the property right issues, sexual harassment, domestic violence, and later when the Constitution of 2015 was adopted by Constituent Assembly, we unveiled a system, a new system, very new in the context of South Asia, maybe new in the context of other countries also. Inclusive democracy. Inclusive democracy. And inclusion is the signature tone of our Constitution. That's where the Prime Minister was so trying to recount the achievement that we have made. This is not to say that there are no issues. There are so many things we have to do. I had a chance to go through the gender justice and gender equality and social inclusion policy of human rights, which Human Rights NHRC brought out in 2021. I looked into the situation within the Human Rights Commission itself. There is in some aspects, human rights institution is ahead of other bureaucracies, other institutions. But there is a lot to work on this issue. When we are talking about the role of NHRIs, it's not just within the NHRIs, within the larger system that prevails in our respective country. How do we engage ourselves in policy reviews, legislative reviews? I was a student for a few years in India, and I know a bit of Indian legal system. They have a practice of bringing out draft legislation, publishing into Gazette. So when the draft legislation is published into a Gazette, then people have a chance to give their views on the law. That's a formal system, I think, that prevails even today. A lot of European countries, I had a chance to study in Germany. A lot of European countries have a system of legislative review by constitutional courts. And then that way, pre-legislative review is a system that probably helps NHRIs to give their views on the legislation itself. Then there are issues relating to the budget, and disbursement of budget, and good governance regarding the activities that are enshrined in the policy instrument. That's where we also see the role of NHRIs. And given the fact that this session is concentrated on specific issues, without going further, I would again pass on to my facilitator to conduct the session, and I'll give my take finally at the end. Thank you.
A big hand for Justice Dr. Anand Mohan. Thank you for setting the tone. I think this goes to the heart of National Human Rights Institution. The reason we were created after 1991 World Conference on Human Rights was every government doesn't disagree with us when we say we want human rights. All governments say, yes, we agree with you. But then when you go home, the implementation does not happen. The integration does not happen. So we always will run to courts. So justices like Dr. Anand would be there if the court is independent. But before going to the court, we need a society which is governed by good laws. And that's when our fight with the law, because courts are also guided by the law. Then we go to parliament. But parliament is as good as how much society shouts and cries, right? Parliament is an animal that looks at who's going to support me and give me support. So if the public is not crying and shouting for women's rights, girl right, gender inclusion, MPs will keep quiet and Parliament will keep quiet. So I think Dr. Anand has brought to the role of NHRI. It's just not about us doing our work in the NHRI. It's our pivotal role to spark change for the country. And that's one of the core functions of the NHRI, to actually do policy advice, law reform in the country. So today with us, to help us check on Asia Pacific, how well we are going in terms of integrating gender perspective in policy, we have 4 excellent panelists with us. So we'll just recognize them. I think their CVs you can check in the booklet. We'll give a round of applause to welcome them. The Honorable Vijaya Bharathi Sayana, the Commissioner from National Human Rights Commission of India. A big hand for her welcome. Honorable Hari Kurniawan. I'll just introduce first, madam. Not yet. I'll just introduce everybody first. Just yeah. The Honorable Hari Kurniawan, Commissioner from Indonesia. Welcome. Honorable Marilia de Costa, Deputy Provedor for Human Rights for Justice of Timor-Leste. Ms. Erica Powell, the Acting Director of the Sex Discrimination Team, Australian Human Rights Commission. So we have quite a good variety here. So to start us off, before I pass it to you, I want to ask the crowd, if you are asked to put up your hand that in the last 10 years, in our country, we've had a 30% integration of gender perspectives in policy and law. How many of you all would take up your hand? Only 30% improvement in the last 10 years in our country. Okay, I see some hands going up. I'm looking at it. Looks like the Nepali hands are going up. Yeah. Any other? Okay, and Mongolia hand. I'm guessing any other country? What country is that? Pakistan. And Iraq? Nepal. Okay, great. So 30%, let's be a bit generous. 15%, 1-5. Other countries, integration of gender policies you feel has happened in your countries in the last 10 years. 15%. Okay. So this is something for you to reflect on. Thank you, everybody. We have made some grounds, but maybe not enough. And with that, I will invite our first speaker. And like yesterday, I'll keep to the 10 minutes each because we want some questions, and then justice will come at the end. So I'll remind you about 2 minutes before your time. So with that, Commissioner Bharathi Sayani, please. Yeah.
First of all, my pranams to Nepal, which is the motherland of our Sita Mata, and my namaskar to one and all. Good morning to all the dignitaries present here, Dr. Anand, Mohan, Bhattarai, Mr. Jerald, Joseph, all my fellow panelists, and all the participants. I feel honored to be given the opportunity to share my thoughts on such an important topic. In the 21st century, gender equality feels like a goal that should have been achieved by the world long time ago. It seems unfathomable why one half of the world's population is still not deemed equal to the other half. As it is called, gender equality is a matter of human rights of every individual's right, regardless of their gender, to be seen as an equal, to be able to enjoy the same rights and privileges as the rest of the world, and to be free from any persecution and discrimination in the name of their gender identity. However, unfortunately, is still struggling to normalize gender equality. The Sustainable Development Goal, which is about achieving gender equality and empowering all women and girls, underlines the commitment of our international community towards achieving this goal by 2030. In order to achieve this goal of gender equality, it is crucial to make sure that policies are gender inclusive in nature. In fact, having gender inclusive policies is the first step in creating a gender just society that treats everyone as equals regardless of their gender identity. It is imperative that policymakers, while they are coming up with any policy, look at it from a gender-sensitive perspective. Gender analysis helps understand the power dynamic between genders in a society, in the public domain and the private domain. It also helps recognize how deprivation of resources like education, employment, as well as absence of social security makes people from certain communities extremely vulnerable to exploitation and abuse. A gender-sensitive lens helps policymakers come up with policies that are sensitive to the needs of all genders. The inclusive nature of a policy is a distinguished factor that has an impact that spans generations. It is also at the heart of ensuring a just and equitable existence for all in any society. It is imperative that policies and legislations are reviewed routinely by bodies like NHRIs so that any gaps may be identified and the policies may be suitably modified. As per the latest available annual periodic labor force survey reports, the estimated labor force participation rate for women of age 15 years and above in the country was 30% and 32.8% during 2019 to 2022. Additionally, the latest government estimates show that the female labor force participation rate in the country has improved significantly by 4.2 percentage points from the previous year to 37.0 in 2023. Additionally, most women in India work in the informal sector are self-employed, which means they often lack full-time jobs, job security, and safety nets. A prime example in the lack of crutches of childcare facilities for working mothers in most Indian establishments. Childcare requires significant time and attention, and without proper mechanisms in place, women struggle to re-enter the workforce. Between 2016-17 and 2020-21, there has been a 61.3% increase in the number of women in permanent positions in India's higher educational institutions. Various government initiatives such as scholarships and financial assistance have significantly boosted female PhD enrollments by 60% from 59,242 in 2016-17 to 95,088 in 2020-21. Today, more women are entering the domain of STEM. India has a higher percentage of women enrolled in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics at the tertiary level than some of developed countries, with 40% female graduates. Women own 90.5% of the total incorporated non-agricultural proprietary enterprises in India, employing 20 to 27 million people. As per the last economic census, only 14% of establishments in India were owned by women. The number has now risen to 20%, though there is still a long way to go. As per Women in Startup Ecosystem Report, the share of women-led startups has increased from 10% in 2017 to 18% in 2020. The government of India has made further significant improvement to bring in gender neutrality, equality through various legislations, policy, and schemes over a period of time. We are witnessing noticeable share in the employment of women in India, even in the spheres of which were traditional male passion, like appointments in the armed forces of the Union, Army, Navy, Air Force, paramilitary forces, state police organizations, etc. We are proudly witnessing their remarkable contribution in the Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, Defense Research and Development, etc. Women in India are getting prominent representations in the field of sports, representing the nation in all the major world platforms. The role of National Human Rights Institution becomes particularly crucial when it comes to protecting and promoting gender equality in the society. It is within the mandate of NHRIs to work towards protecting and promote the fundamental rights of all people in their countries. There are numerous ways in which an NHRI can intervene to ensure gender equality by monitoring the implementation of existing policies, by suggesting reforms in the policies that it feels require modification, and by spreading awareness about the issue through various media platforms. The National Human Rights Commission of India has always been at the forefront of women's rights in India ever since it was founded in 1993. The NHRC recognized the important role it plays in ensuring that gender equality is established in the society and that the women in India feel empowered to take independent decisions in their personal and professional lives. Under the Protection of Human Rights Act of 1993, which laid the foundational basis for NHRC India, the Commission has the power to review the safeguards provided by or under the Indian Constitution or any law for the time being in force for the protection of human rights and recommended measures for their effective implementation. NHRC India has regularly intervened in policy matters to protect the rights of women. In the past, NHRC India has returned to state governments to re-access existing rules so as to ensure that all women in the country are able to avail the maternity benefits as promised in the Maternity Benefits Act 1961. Furthermore, after the coming of the Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act 2013, the National Human Rights Commission of India has been assiduously working towards ensuring that the Act is being followed across the country. In 2002, the Commission examined the provisions of the Protection from Domestic Violence Bill drafted by the Department of Women and Child Development in consultation with the Ministry of Law, Justice and Company Affairs. It followed up the matter till the proposed legislation was ended. The Commission's suggestions were incorporated in the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005. Similarly, in 2019, when the surrogacy bill was being discussed in the Indian Parliament, NHRC India gave its detailed inputs on the proposed bill, including both shortcomings or recommendations for improvement, which were incorporated in the draft of the bill that was finally passed in the Parliament. NHRC India has also formed a core group on women, which meets periodically to discuss issues that are deemed to be relevant to the protection of the rights of women in India. The core group members come
Just
from...
a reminder.
2 minutes, sir. 2 minutes. From diverse backgrounds, they are all lawyers, activists, academicians, and scholars who have all worked in the field of women's rights in India. In the past, the agendas discussed in these expert meetings include women's right to health and their nutritional status, missing women in India, among others. In all these meetings, the recommendations given by the participants are then conveyed to the relevant ministries so that they may consider revisions to certain policies. The gender analysis done by NHRC is therefore communicated to the concerned bodies through recommendations and guidelines. NHRC India also ensures gender equality through the issuance of Man-India advisories on women's rights. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the Commission took note of how women across India are facing a greater vulnerability and therefore issued an advisory to protect the rights of the women in light of the pandemic. More recently, NHRC India has published an advisory on protection of human rights of the widows. The advisory, which is pan-India in nature, recognizes the challenges faced by the widows in the country and consists of detailed recommendations to empower widows and ensure that their human rights are protected. All the states are expected to provide the Commission with a written response regarding the steps they have taken to implement the advisory. NHS also has conducted numerous research studies that are aimed to better understanding the challenges to women's empowerment and upliftment. One of the aims of such studies is to examine existing policies and suggest amendments to legislations. NHRC India undertook a detailed study on the United Nations Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women, the Indian Constitution, legislation, schemes, policies, and judgments. The objective of the study was to identify and share with the stakeholders the status of implementation of CEDAW in India, the gaps between the articles of the CEDAW and the various Indian provisions that ensure protection of rights of the women, and to suggest recommendations and send them to the concerned ministries and departments for taking necessary action. Similarly, NHRC India has undertaken several studies on different aspects of women's rights to promote the cause of gender equality, furthering gender analysis that is needed for effective policy formation. NHRC India also regularly organizes seminars, conferences, and open house discussions on issues pertaining to gender equality and women's rights. In the past, the Commission has organized conferences on women's participation in the labor force, women in the workplace, and more recently on the derogatory practices against women in India. Though the medium of such events, NHRC seeks to bring attention to different issues related to women's rights and recommend a course of action to all concerned government bodies. Gender equality is not just about legally enforcing equality on paper. It is a matter of social justice, a matter of basic human rights. It is true that a lot of work has been done to promote the cause of gender equality, and significant progress has been made. However, we must not forget that it is a long road ahead. The issue is complex and there are numerous challenges on the path, but I strongly believe that through platforms like these, we can help educate and sensitize national human rights institutions who will then work towards achieving this much awaited and much needed goal of gender equality. Lastly, I want to tell you there are over 247 people are working in NHRC India. Out of 247, 143 are female workers. Thank you.
Thank you. A big hand for Commissioner Vijaya. Thank you. I know you were rushing to finish your speech, but thank you very much. So I think she's given all the works Human Rights Commission does, from advisory role to detailed study, to meeting with stakeholders, to state governments, federal government, new bills, investigation. So, and also when there is no thinking, like now a new advisory on human rights of widows. So that's, you are way when government has not thought about it. That's another role that governments should do. But also the statistics of India is very impressive, you know, that technical, educational, women are in the forefront, and in spatial science, army, police. So these are where we will know whether all this have changed in society on the ground. But thank you for that. And I continue with our next Commissioner, Hari Kurniawan, from the Indonesian National Commission on Human Rights. Please.
I can maybe okay. Okay, thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Namaste. Good morning, everyone. I want to introduce Komnas, the Indonesian National Commission on Human Rights, established in 1993 when the new Orba, the authoritarianism, Suharto, that become a president. And our mandate in the Act 39 and 26 years 2000, we have a 4-month mandate: research and education, monitoring, investigation, and mediation. The 4 functions of Komnas embody the objectives the Commission is developing to create conducive conditions for the implementation of human rights and improve the protection and enforcement of human rights. The 4 functions can be grouped into 2 categories: promotion and enforcement. The task of promotion is realized through education and research, while enforcement is advanced through efforts to resolve cases through monitoring, investigation, and mediation. Komnas has 9 commissioners, 3 women and 6 men. Also, chairperson is Honorable Adnika Novasikiro, who has experience in women's journal and advocacy in elderly people. 1 commissioner is a person with disability, and me. And then I will brief about how significant of reviewing the legislation and the regulation. The reviewing of laws and human rights policies is important to ensure that the government, as the duty holder, has fulfilled, respected, and protected the human rights of its citizens. Based on this, the Indonesian government has ratified a number of human rights conventions, including CEDAW, and then CAT, and CRPD. Komnas is currently reviewing the Omnibus Law on Job Creation, which has been declared incompatible with human rights principles. Furthermore, Komnas encouraged the passage of the Sexual Violence Crime Law, Act number 12 to years 2022, to ensure that victim rights are recognized and rehabilitated, as well as to encourage the punishment of perpetrators. And our best practice, Komnas has issued and disseminated 3 standard norms and procedures, such as the SNP on human rights defenders, the SNP, on the right to health and also vulnerable groups in election. The SNP serves as policy guidelines for ministers and institutions, such as general comment on international covenant. This includes the designation of human rights cities, a 30% female quota in election, non-judicial resolution of gross violations of human rights, and the establishment of 2 regional regulations for the protection of human rights defenders in East Nusa Tenggara. The SNP was established to provide a practical and usable version of various international and national human rights instruments. This SNP is useful for interpreting human rights norms in relation to the context and events. Komnas HAM also trains law enforcement officials and the community about human rights, including the rights of vulnerable groups, such as people with disability, migrant workers, women, domestic workers, children, the elderly, and indigenous people. Komnas HAM has issued recommendations to the government and the parliament in response to complaints, one of which is about gender equality. Komnas HAM has issued a letter to protect human rights defenders, such as in the case of Mr. Harris and Mrs. Fatia from criminalization. Both of them were charged with defamation under Indonesia Electronic Information and Transaction Laws, often known as the ITE law for short. They also face secondary fake news and defamation charges under the criminal code. The charges refer to a YouTube video in which the activists speculated about connection between military operation in the Papua region and prominent mining firms. Komnas HAM also advocates for amnesty for Ms. Mary Jane Veloso, Filipinos, a victim of human trafficking. In addition, the Commission filed an amicus curiae brief with the court regarding a civil society lawsuit in this matter. And strategy to employ, Komnas HAM is conducting research on policy and legislation. This aims to ensure that vulnerable and marginalized groups' rights to ensure protected and respected. The National Commission on Human Rights ensures that the government receives recommendations on the advancement of human rights in policies and development programs for vulnerable people, minority, and marginalized groups. Komnas HAM urges the government to strengthen the mainstreaming of human rights for marginalized and minority groups, such as people with disability, migrant workers, women, domestic workers, children, the elderly, and indigenous people, in order to respect, protect, and fulfill their rights, as well as to take serious strategic steps to prevent human rights violation. Komnas HAM recommends that the Indonesian government to speed up the ratification of international human rights instruments such as Optional Protocol CAT, Optional Protocol CRPD, ILO Convention 188, and ILO Convention 189, as well as discuss and approve draft laws on indigenous peoples and draft law on domestic workers. B, take the necessary administrative, legislative, and or other steps to ensure the recognition and protection of human rights defenders, including internalizing and adopting the United Nations guidelines on the institutionalization, including in emergency years 2022. Eliminating the institutionalization of institutions for mental disability, include the repealing Article 433 of the Indonesian Civil Code Law concerning guardianship. D, strengthen maritime transport infrastructure, internet networks, and special budgets in island regions to allow the community to report human rights violations that occur. Thank you very much.
Thank you. A big hand to Commissioner Hari Kurniawan. Terima kasih. Yeah, so he mentioned something. First of all, congratulations to Indonesia for having women as their chair. I think the first woman chair in Indonesia. So congratulations. I think he has given us the work of Komnas, and if you know, it's another huge country. I mean, India is a huge country, but Indonesia, I don't know how many thousand, 7,000 islands, 3 time zones. Yeah, if you take an island, you take a flight from left to right, maybe 7 hours or flight. So it's huge and many islands. So I think the role of the NHRI is crucially important. He spoke about policy guidelines for government, criticism or disagreement with the law government has passed. This is very powerful. Parliament has already passed the law, and the Commission has rejected that law as not being correct. I think so. They've kept up to it, and I know because Malaysia is their neighbor. They spoke about human rights city, also promoting a whole concept of working with human rights cities. A few cities are branded human rights cities. Maybe you can find out when we have time later. Also specific human rights defenders who are targeted. He mentioned 2 names, one a woman, one's a man, and they have kept close to this. This was a targeted attack because they spoke up, and some minister didn't like it, yeah. And also the role of Human Rights Commission to go beyond borders. Foreigner who was a victim of human trafficking was seen as a criminal and charged to death trafficking. It's a long case, and they have a campaign for it. So the question of mainstreaming human rights into government policy is what commissions will have to do, but it means so many levels, right? Federal, province, local, village, provincial. So thank you, Commissioner Kurniawan. We continue now with Indonesia's neighbor, Timor-Leste. We invite Commissioner, Deputy Provedor for Human Rights, Marilia. Please.
I'm a tall one. Everyone can see me. Oh, I have to make this. Maybe you can do that. You can do that. Can you do it? Okay, yeah, okay. Sorry for that. I still feel dancing last night. When the music, I feel like, oh, I want to dance. Because Timor-Leste culture is like a dance party, everything. Even you're feeling sad, but still going on. You don't want to think about the sad every moment, but we need to happy. Okay, thank you. On behalf of the Ombudsman of Human Rights and Justice Timor-Leste, we appreciate for National Human Rights Commission in Nepal, Chairperson Bahadur Magar, Dr. Lily Tappa, Asia Pacific Forum, and all organizers and special participants in this conference. Good morning, all. Hello, good morning. Wow, thank you. Okay, it is my pleasure to speak as alternative speaker on integrity, gender perspective in policy and legislative review by the National Human Rights Institution, which will cover: one is gender analysis and policy review. The second is good practice of National Human Rights Institution, intervention in gender equality and legislation, and third, strategy for recommending amendment to existing legislation to promote gender equality. This topic is indeed very important for us to share our thoughts and best practice as an institution that has dual mandate in promote good governance and protect and promote human rights. Before I go to my slide, speaking on topic on integrity, gender perspective and policy and legislation review by National Human Rights Institution, we treat subtopic as I mentioned. I am going to briefly explain that the Ombudsman of Human Rights Justice of Timor-Leste, PDSJ, entrenched in the Constitution of the Democratic Republic of Timor-Leste, proclamation in 2002, Section 27, Ombudsman of the Constitution state the Ombudsman shall be independent organ in charge of examining and checking to stealthy citizens complaining against public bodies, certify the conformity of the act with the law, preventing and initiative the whole process to remedy injustice. The Ombudsman for Human Rights Justice was established under the Law 7, 2004, revised by Law number 8, 2009, Article 30, to which all reference to the statute in this statement refer Law 7, 2074, Article 7, one states that the Provedor has jurisdiction over the entire country. Can move. The organic structure of the Office of the Ombudsman for Human Rights and Justice Decree Law was approved by the Council of Ministers 20 April 2060 and promulgated 5 July 2060, thus replacing the organic structure previously applicable under the Decree Law 25 2011. The new organic law significantly changes the organizational structure of the PSD, enables it to better fulfill its mandate. There are the legal basis that enable us to fulfill our mandate, in which one of the activity among the others is included review of. The Office of the Ombudsman for Human Rights and Justice has started and will continue to campaign for gender equality in Timor-Leste. In our election for parliament election, there is a quota for women. In every three candidates for membership in parliament, there must be a list of one female. Our parliament has 65 members. In terms of number, we may say that in the total number of 65 members of the parliament, there are less to 21 female parliament members. It's 32%. Now move the slide. This one is the human rights management in our internal PSD. The total human resource PSD have 152 persons, 62 women and 90 men. This is our office. And women leadership senior level is 40%. And political position 33%. This is include me and Provedor, and we have a deputy for good governance and deputy for human rights. And also we have women in political position, national parliament, 32%, like I mentioned already. Can move? Okay. This. Policy analysis from gender perspective focus on the evaluation what is the stat in the policy document on gender issue. Identify how to understand the issue of gender equality, how the state propose to find a solution to existing problem and also potential problem that will arise in the policy. The Directorate of the monitoring recommendations supervise all action of public bodies, such as the state institution, government action of the policy and army. In the respect, PDSA can act on the basics of the complaint as a prevention measure or as a structural activity. Example of these are monitoring of the prison, detention, facilitation and facilities and schools. Furthermore, PDSA has recently invested significant efforts in monitoring the 2018 presidential election, the 2018 early parliamentary election, and the 2018 parliamentary election. The Directorate of Promotion activity conducted training and public outreach to target group, including very specific target groups such as women, as well as being a focal point to gender issue. Upon finding any violence of principle of good governance and human rights or any violation of the law, the Directorate shall publish a monitoring report, including recommendations to the relevant entities, allowing them to correct the situation. The Directorate of Monitoring and Recommendation supervise all action of public bodies, such as the state institution, government action, action of the police and army. In this respect, the PDSA can act of the basic of complaint as a preventive measure or as a structural activity. Explain examples of the are monitoring female presence are corrected in same facilitators as a men. Although they sleep in the separate block, there has been some interaction with the male inmates in the Glenu and Bekora prison. Upon finding any violence of principle of the good governance and human rights or any violation of the law, the Directorate shall publish a monitoring reporting, including recommendations to the entities, allowing them and correct the current situation. Integration of the concept of equality and non-discrimination into the training manual of human rights and national police and defense force of the Timor-Leste. Second, conducted information session on human rights and gender equality to the community leader and student.
You have 2 minutes more.
Okay, I hope I can finish it. Regularly, PDSA organizes general press meeting to update the press and those with the public on the PDSA activity in the mandate. A recent Sun General Press meeting occurred on 31 January 2018. There is not necessary indirect reason for the organization such as event. It is simply of an opportunity for the press to stay in touch with the PDSA and to ask the Provedor question about any ongoing business. The PDSA has facing challenges such as the PDSA in the question judicial faction and recommendation to any other competent authority to decide, limited specialist staff on gender issue, limited the human rights and budget. The one is the Provedor for Human Rights and Justice Timor-Leste depend on government, particularly in the Minister of Finance of Timor-Leste. Conclusion, achievement of the equality between women and men has become a principle and integrity goals in the International Development Agenda. The principle of the gender equality is the idea that human rights cannot be achieved without guarantee that women and men have full and equal rights, responsibilities, and opportunity. Thank you very much for attention.
Thank you. A big hand to Deputy Provedor Marilia. Thank you, thank you. I think Timor-Leste is a small nation of 1 million people. And it's a fairly new independent nation, 25 years, so 24, 20 years, 24 years, yeah. So this nation has a chance to train police officers, to do policy analysis, to also be integrated in different committees and focal points that government set up, technical working groups. So I think this is another way the NHRI ensures integration. if you are present in the committees and working groups that are set up nationally. I think training of army and police and now local government has been mentioned by some other commissions, which is very important to bring human rights down to the ground. Thank you very much, Deputy Provedor. We continue with our final speaker for this panel, and before an open discussion, I invite now Ms. Erica Powell, the Acting Director of the Sex Discrimination Team, Australian Human Rights Commission. Over to you.
I've got to turn it on, okay. Namaskar. Salam, salamat pagi. Hello. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you today and to be joining fellow panelists, facilitator and our chair also. Thank you NHRI Nepal for having us for such an important occasion. It's wonderful to be here. So at the Australian Human Rights Commission, we have a dedicated gender equality function. The Sex Discrimination Commissioner and the team that I work on are responsible for the Commission's work to promote gender equality, counter discrimination, sexual harassment and violence against women and other barriers to equality. And we also act to overcome discrimination, harassment and vilification of LGBTIQ+ communities in Australia. So we operate under a Sex Discrimination Act, which gives effect to Australia's obligations under CEDAW. And the Act offers protections for people on the basis of their sex, their sexual orientation, their gender identity, their intersex status, marital or relationship status, pregnancy and breastfeeding, and it also protects workers with family responsibilities and makes workplace sexual harassment unlawful in Australia. So for us, the opportunity to review laws and policies concerning human rights and to provide advice is really critical to addressing positive change in Australia. For instance, in Australia, gender-based violence is endemic. Last year alone, 1 woman was killed every 11 days by a current or former intimate partner, and 2 in 5 women have experienced domestic and family violence since the age of 15. And the statistics are far worse when you look at diverse cohorts. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women are 33 times more likely to be hospitalised as a result of domestic and family violence. So by reviewing policies and laws concerning human rights, we hope to address the horrifying statistics such as this. One of the ways that we provide advice to governments is that our chair mentioned through submission processes. So we have the opportunity to critically analyse the government's proposed legislation and policy and determine how it would impact LGBTIQ+ people in Australia, but also women. And when doing this, we often leverage our international standards under CEDAW. Through providing our advice to government, through submissions, we've been able to sometimes see small and other times see really significant changes. For example, some recent wins that we've had. Workplaces over 100 employees in Australia must now publicly report on their gender pay gap, which is a really big win for us. And it's now lawful for an employer to fire an employee for sexually harassing another worker, which means that for perpetrators, they're less able to lodge an unfair dismissal claim in a workplace. And just last week, we've been advocating to include additional questions in the Australian census so that we can better count gender diverse Australians to ensure that our funding and services can go to the right places where those communities and their families live. Another key approach that we often take is to proactively identify gaps or problems within existing legislation. So by undertaking research projects, both qualitative and quantitative, and conducting national inquiries or truth-seeking work, we tend to try and find and build our own evidence base. So in undertaking this work, we leverage either an existing evidence base or we try to build our own. And having that evidence base really helps us to assess the nature of the problem and gives us something to work towards to drive for change. And it helps us to identify where there might be gaps and measure where our work may be having a positive impact over time as well, which is really helpful for us to advocate for more funding or for work or to identify where we may need to change again in the future. In any research processes that we conduct, we always try to ensure that we have best practice ethical research standards. And that includes processes that are trauma-informed, So ensuring that the process is healing and helpful for the participants of the research and not engaging or contributing to the existing harm that they've already endured as a result of the injustice they've endured. We also take an intersectional approach to ensure that we consider the impacts of policy on all Australians and not just those who are in the majority. And we try to amplify the voices of those most marginalised or not considered by the proposed policy or legislation. Some examples of this work is the work that my team are doing on workplace sexual harassment prevention in Australia. So in 2020, we completed the National Inquiry into Sexual Harassment in Australian Workplaces, and this was the first national inquiry of its kind. As part of the National Inquiry, we had a survey of 10,000 Australians. We held 60 public consultations with over 600 representatives participating from community organisations, government, industry, victims, unions and regulators. We had 460 written submissions, and we also conducted economic modelling. Our final report had 55 recommendations to government, of which all of them were accepted, which was an incredible win for gender equality in Australia. It was a really exciting time for us. So through the inquiry, we learned that sexual harassment is incredibly common. 1 in 3 people in Australia experience it. Women, non-binary people, and lesbian, gay, and bisexual people experience it at much higher rates than men. We also learned through our economic modelling that workplace sexual harassment is incredibly bad for business and that it cost Australia approximately $3.8 billion in 2018 alone. And $273 million of that was a cost to government. So that evidence alone was significant enough for us to be able to drive legislative change. The key drivers of workplace sexual harassment we learned were power imbalances because of gender inequality and other discrimination, as well as a range of other factors within a workplace environment that contribute to that and enable perpetrators to act. We also learned that just 1 in 8 people will report an incident of workplace sexual harassment because they felt usually unsafe to do so, or there were other things, other limiting factors and barriers, such as their risk to career prospects and the impact that might have on their livelihoods, and other types of victimisation that they might suffer as a result of colleagues or managers ignoring their complaints. We learned that employers would only address sexual harassment after it had been reported, and in many instances, they still did not address it. So this highlights that we cannot rely on complaints of workplace sexual harassment to reduce the incidence. Because of this, we demonstrated a need for legislative reform to improve protections for workers. We felt that our laws must move from a reactive approach, where we rely on complaints and people to come forward, to one that requires positive action from employers. And as a consequence of that finding, we introduced the positive duty provision into our Sex Discrimination Act. And the positive duty requires employers to take reasonable and proportionate measures to eliminate, as far as possible, certain forms of unlawful conduct, including workplace sexual harassment, sex-based harassment, victimisation, and a range of other factors related to gender equality in the workplace. So this amendment in our legislation has filled a significant gap for us and provides protection from sexual harassment in Australian workplaces. And that obviously disproportionately affects women and LGBTIQ+ people. And it's relatively new legislation, so we're really looking forward to measuring the impact of those changes over time. Another project that we're running at the moment to build an evidence base is a project called Speaking from Experience Project. And this project invites people who've been sexually harassed at work to have their say about what they think needs to change in workplaces. And as part of this project, we see people with lived experience of sexual harassment as experts in policy and practice change. And so speaking and learning from them is integral to achieving positive change. In spite of all of this, I must say that we do face some challenges also. While we do our best to apply an intersectional lens to all the work that we do, there can be challenges in doing this all of the time. Where we might, for instance, have funding limitations, it can be challenging for us to translate our work into multiple languages, as one example of where we find challenges with that. We also don't have a great deal of visibility of trans and gender diverse people's experiences of gender inequality in Australia, and we're really hoping to address this in future evidence collection to help us to bolster our efforts in gender analysis and providing recommendation to government on policy and legislative change. And we also know that from our research that other forms of discrimination, such as racism, homophobia, transphobia, ableism, drive gender inequality. And so we really must address all of these issues holistically if we're going to achieve gender equality. And we're still working out ways to better integrate all of these areas of discrimination and human rights together. And I'm sure that's a challenge that we all face as well. So this conference has been a really incredible lesson for me to learn from all of you and the fellow panelists. And it's been really good to learn about what is and isn't working in the different country contexts. So for this, I thank you all. And while it's difficult to apply a one-size-fits-all approach to our work, to close, I'll share some strategies that have worked well for us to drive change in existing policy and legislation. The first of those is building relationships with policymakers and key decision makers, meeting regularly to discuss challenges and opportunities. The second is building that evidence base. This has been really key for us, both qualitative and quantitative, either through national inquiries or truth seeking. Thirdly, collaborating with civil society, research institutions and other experts to build a united advocacy front. Many voices are louder than one. And fourth, learning from people with lived experience. As I mentioned, centering their voices and learning from them in any policy recommendations we advocate for. Without their knowledge, we will likely miss really critical ways to promote gender equality. And lastly, having a diverse team. So that means that gender analysis is going to be more robust. Leveraging a range of perspectives amongst our team in particular has allowed us to think more naturally. And I like to think of our diverse team as a real superpower. Without our differences, we would not have the same strengths, and there's no way that we could have the same impact with our work. Thanks.
Thank you. A big hand for Ms. Erica Powell. So get ready. We have a bit of time for some discussion, question, and comments. But I think the significant experience is the national inquiry, the first on sexual harassment in workplace. Congratulations to that. And I didn't get the number. How many recommendations did you all give the government? So the conclusion of the 10,000 interviews was 55 recommendations given to the government, and the government accepted all recommendations. So a national inquiry mechanism is quite effective, and to integrate changes into the law. I think there's an update to the law, right? So there is a sexual harassment in employment, workplace law, but not as good as enough, because their study showed despite the law, employers are still reluctant, people are still afraid to speak. So you have a law, but it's still not happening. So now you need to think a ways forward, and I think NHRIs need to find how to tighten the screw here or give more power. So an experiment, as you said, and also to do different things with dialogue partners. And the challenges of applying intersectional lenses is going to be a challenge for all NHRIs. You know, so that's also for us. I think the data that she started us off with on even a community, the Aboriginal community, had a more higher instances of domestic violence compared to the national average. So you can't use one average for all. You need to work with particular community based on their reality. Thank you for that, Ms. Erica. So now I open the floor to your thoughts on the integration of gender perspectives in policy and legislative. You can ask questions to our yes. Yeah. Sure. I know, I got the information. Yes. Yeah. So I think the Commissioner has requested her colleague to join her to help in the language and also content, so in order to be specific. So if we can get one more chair, right? Can we get a chair, and can we invite the rep, Miss Ilakia? If you can join the Commissioner on the stage and to support and help. Okay, so we open the floor for any comments, questions on the integration of gender perspective. This is the work or what all the thousands of civil society NHRIs in Asia Pacific has been hoping for. So anyone wants to start us off? Yes, I see 1, and I see 2, and I see 3 and 4. We'll take this 4 first. Huh? We'll start with this first table here. Can you leave? Yeah. All right. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. Just a reminder, because of time, just your name, organization, and a short question or comment.
To you, Gender Studies Department. My question is, what is the work or what is the role of NHRs with educational institutions related to the right to education as well as the quality of the education, and also with the media, how they are monitoring media, if the...
Wait, I think something's wrong with the mic. We're not really hearing you very well.
Okay, my question is...
Wait, hold on, maybe we change the mic. It's going on. Can we change the mic, please? Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, please repeat the question again.
Okay, my question is related to education. What is the role of NHRIs with educational institutions regarding the right to get education and the quality of education, as well as the media, how it is working with the media? If the media is broadcasting any thing that is against human rights, how they are working with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. To the colleague behind. Yeah.
Namaste, my name is Jyoti Singh Bhandari. I'm lecturer.
A bit louder, please.
My name is Jyoti Singh Bhandari. I'm lecturer for legal research. My topic is. My question here is, these days a lot of hush-hush issues in terms of gender, like paternity leave or miscarriage or mental health or postpartum depression. These things are being talked, which existed but not discussed. So how, any of the dignitaries can answer, how is your nation incorporating these newly talked about gender norms or perspectives in relevant context? Thank you.
Thank you. There's one there, and then we'll come back here, right? At the back there, gentleman there.
Good morning. Syam Babu Kafli, National Human Rights Commission, Nepal. As for the Paris principles, NHRC have mandate to review of law and policies too. In this context, I want to whether in your organization there is a clear mandate to recommend the law and policy. If yes, have you recommend it and government acknowledge it or not, your recommendations? Thank you.
Okay, quite a straightforward question. All the recommendations by NHRI to government, do they acknowledge it or they just smile and say thank you and say yes, the final question here. Yeah. Mike, please, for a colleague here. Coming, Mike. Yeah.
Thank you for the time. I have one question for the Honorable
Your name, please?
Okay. I'm Teresina Ximenes from the National Human Rights Institution of the Timor-Leste. My question is for the Honorable Erika Powell. Congratulations for your institution, but you mentioned that your recommendation, all recommendation give to the government, they already, all of the recommendation is implemented. But I have question, maybe your institution had a good manner to approach the government, or the institution is the strict regulation that government need to follow implement your recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So this is the first set. Colleagues, if you want to answer the question, make it brief. So you want to start? Erika, one directed at you directly first. Yeah.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, I think, is this working?
Yes.
Yes, okay, now it's working. Thank you. Thank you for the questions.
Can
Yes.
you put the mic closer?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at this. Yes, we did have success with the implementation or agreement to implement 55 of the recommendations. The implementation process is ongoing, so we haven't completed that process yet, but it is, all of those recommendations are underway, so that is quite exciting. Some have been slower to pick up than certainly, and some are probably a bit more challenging to implement than what we had anticipated, I think. So that's also a lesson. But yes, we did have an existing relationship with government, and fortunately for us, the media cycle was quite prominent at the time around the Me Too movement in Australia, and so there was a lot of protest and a lot of emphasis placed on gender equality. So I think that we hit a little bit of a perfect storm in that many things align to allow for there to be broad government and public support for there to be change. And so I think that was really lucky for us at that time, because we've had other recommendations in the past which haven't had as much success. So for us, that was a really big win also, yeah.
Thank you. Are you suggesting that we should create a storm whenever, whenever you want to bring change?
Just create a storm and it will work, you know?
Yeah, so sometimes the issue on the ground works well with the timing of the push for policy change, yeah? Thank you. There was a question about the new gender norms. How is that coming? I mean, some like, mental health issues, depression, post, yeah, so is it being addressed by the commissions or not? Or I think that's what she wanted to know. How do we do it, yeah?
So in India, we have a Mental Health Act that has come into force recently, and we conduct a lot of training programs in collaboration with many universities, in collaboration with educational institutions throughout the country. And we also train people with the features of the Act, how is it applicable and how is it useful for the current generation. So that way we are educating people, creating awareness regarding the Mental Health Act, which is very useful for the current generation.
Okay, that's one example. Thank you. Any others? You want to add something? Yeah, go ahead.
In Australia, we've recently, this has been a big part of what's being discussed as well, and we've recently had some amendments to maternity leave to incorporate both parents, the government-funded parental leave for both men and women to take. And we've also had miscarriage leave, so if an individual has a miscarriage, then they're able to take leave at their workplace as well.
Thank you. There was a question about right to education and quality of education. How do we intervene so that issue of gender is not forgotten, girl child is not taken equally and forgotten also. So any comments on that? Media later, but just on the Commissioner.
Thank you very much. In Indonesia, we have a schedule through training and education with the journalists and all of the media, and we train about gender and disability and social inclusion. Then the officer of the training is Miss Putu as Commissioner of Training and Education in Komnas HAM. So we try to involve the gender agenda in our draft recommendation for the government, and we push the gender budget statement in all of the budget that government do.
Maria, you want to add anything? Yeah, sure, please.
I think this is about the media, how to bring them to monitoring or to reporting our activity. For example, in PDHZ, we have an internal media can publish our activity, and then every month we have like reporting about the case, to the media to publish in our website, our Facebook, and then also we have a regularly meeting with the press media in Timor-Leste. We have it. Government have two media, TVTL, and then also independent, not independent, but we call GMM. And then this is the one media we can invite. We have coordination, collaboration, and also we have an MOU, signed MOU with the government media, and then to reporting our information when we have, like, for example, like the case about the in Timor, violation, and then other issue. We also invite them to monitor and then take the video and publish in our website and also in the TV government. Yeah, I think that one is we have connection with the media.
Thank you. On the right to education from India, anything, or from Australia or Indonesia, on the quality of education and right to education, which I know by statistics, the improvement in girl child education, yeah.
Regarding the education, NHRC visit the sudden visits to surprise. We will make surprise visits to hostels and colleges, even in the medical also we'll go. I visited so many medical hostels, whether they are having the good infrastructure, healthcare, hygiene, security, and all these things. And I visited so many schools in India also on behalf of the NHRC, whether the children are getting good education or not, they are having the infrastructure, whether they are living in hygienic or not, whether there is a security or not, how the registers are maintaining about their food, whether they are getting all the facilities given by the government. So like that sudden visits will be there through the NHRC. For regarding the education, we will conduct so many awareness camps and we'll talk to the chief secretaries of the government, and we will call ministries of education, and also we'll take those recommendations and suggestions from NGOs and all other institutions regarding this issue.
Thank you. That's another power of the Commission, to do unscheduled visits, surprise visits, to check on both schools, the quality, and even hostels or how it's managed. I think it's very important, because normally reports that come in are all sanitized. Most reports are quite good, right? Very few people will tell you honestly, my school is in bad condition. So that's why you need to visit them. We have time for one more question. Yeah, I see one hand. Okay, two. The last two. Okay, and yes, the mic, please. Mic. One mic in front and one mic at the back. Yeah, I think it's white. Yeah.
Thank you for all panelists for the excellent presentation. My name is Tara Upreti from the Women's Foundation. We have a shelter and experience. In Nepal, every single day we have 3 to 5 cases come from domestic violence. And my experience, over 90% women, they don't report the case or publish for their security and lack of confidentiality and privacy issue, and they are and also fear. And we keep confidential and help them, but it's still, it's data in domestic violence. It's really like painful in Nepal too, who are dealing with extreme anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, whatever. But of fear, there is I think no record or real research in Nepal, my experience. Thank you.
Thank you. So maybe that's more a comment, I think linked to your data and research part, that we need data and research to know reality. She says, while I see domestic violence victims, but I feel 90% are still out there, and we need to understand why. What are the reasons that are not bringing them to complain? This is very important, linked to the cultural question, if anyone of you want to answer. Why so few people, after 30 years of human rights framing, and yet afraid to come up? A final comment or question, please?
Good morning, and thank you to the panelists for the presentation and the examples you given regarding the work you've done within.
Can you put the mic closer? Man?
Regarding the work you've done within your NHRIs in terms of integrating gender into policy and legislative reviews. My question is, what has been the impact of comments, concluding observations and recommendations from international human rights mechanisms, including treaty bodies, the Human Rights Council, and special rapporteurs regarding gender when you conduct these kind of activities? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So if one or two final comments before I hand it back to the chair. You want to go, Erica? And also I remember the question of the colleague about whether our recommendations are accepted or not by government. I think it's a big question. Maybe APF or Gandri can take it up. But in actuality, I think all of us have some yes, maybe many no's, many uncertain. But it's a good comment for us to reflect for APF and Gandri, if we do a survey, how much of NHRI's recommendations actually are taken up seriously by the government. But thank you for that provocative question. Over to you, Erica.
Yeah, I'm happy to respond to the first question. So, yeah, we have the same problem with domestic and family violence in Australia in that we have, a really small proportion of people coming forward and seeking support. The majority, and an unknown number really, that experience it and are unable to seek support for various reasons. We do have some research that looks at what some of the barriers are for people to seek support, and often it can be as a result of their financial situation. So not having the freedom to leave an abusive partner. It can also be as a result of judgment or fear of community backlash as well. Also wanting to focus on maintaining a family unit, looking after children, thinking about them first. And so there's a range of factors that women will feel that, they don't want to report because they've assessed the safety risk for them as being more dangerous to leave. And what we also find in our evidence base is that often the point at which a woman leaves her partner, it can be the most dangerous time. That's where we see the highest rates or the greatest risk of a partner murdering their partner. And so that's, there's, I guess, a range of risk factors, but we're still grappling with that as well. And but just trying to build an evidence base and understand,
Thank you. Thank you on that. Yes. We finished with questions. I'm sorry, we don't have time, apologies. But during tea break, we can chat with the colleagues. The second question, I think, is a broad question on whether the general observation or comments by the treaty bodies to the governments, does that help the NHRIs in pushing the integration agenda? If I got that correct, yes. So yesterday I heard Commissioner Prof. Azia mention in Malaysia struggling to advise the government, but any one example here you want to share that the treaty body recommendation, you use it to push the government even more? That's the question. Is it helpful or the government doesn't bother? Yeah, you want to say something about?
Treaty body's recommendation is like treaty body's recommendations as concluding observation is important to push our regulation for government. And Indonesia has pushed some concluding observation from such as ECOSOC committee and political and civil rights committee, and we cooperate with the special rapporteur to join advocation together to push the government of Indonesia. And some of recommendation has implementing with the government of Indonesia, because they rarely afraid with the recommendation from the committee.
They are afraid?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So governments are afraid of the international recommendation. That's a good idea to push it. Okay, if I don't see any other hands, we can come to give a big hand to our 4 panelists for a very good intervention. Thank you to all our commissioners and directors. With that, I hand over the floor back to the chair for the conclusion.
Thank you so much. You listened to the very extensive presentation by our panelists. I wish we could have given more time to them. But I believe since they have papers, if those papers are handed over to the Human Rights Commission, that will come up in the proceeding report. So I request the panelists to hand over to the papers that they have with them. I listened very attentively to the presentation given by this distinguished panelist. Very creative work is being done in different institutions. And getting to know that the works are being done, for instance, the work by Human Rights Commission of India on protection of widows and other issues that you have raised are very pertinent. And the increase of women in higher education, technical education, and their involvement in security services is a very noteworthy and positive development taking place in India. Recently, I listened to the observation made by Honorable Chief Justice of India. He was giving the demographic transition of the judiciary in India. The lower judiciary, the district judiciary, there is so much increase of women judges and officers in the lower judiciary. The demographic transition is witnessed very, very rapidly in India, which Madam also highlighted. And coming to Indonesia, Hariji, you talked about the role played by the Human Rights Commission on Protection of Human Rights Defenders. That's a very praiseworthy work of the institution. National Human Rights Commission of Nepal has also conducted some work on that area. They have brought out some policy or draft legislation on protection of human rights defenders, and a lot of other works like on disability issues, migrant worker issues, and amicus curiae submission to the court. These are very praiseworthy work. And Maria, you gave the view of the ombudsman that is mentioned in your constitution. It's a little different institution in the sense that the ombudsman has a quasi-judicial function, as you rightly mentioned. So there are possibilities of tinkering and playing with the constitution and having provision where Human Rights Commission can also play a quasi-judicial function. If that is the possibility, then maybe outcome monitoring, to say the least, could be one area that could be taken by Human Rights Commission. When we talk about outcome monitoring, this includes outcome monitoring of the recommendation that Human Rights Commissions have made, or the outcome monitoring of the decisions that the court have handed down. This is one area probably Human Rights Commission could look into. And Erica, you talked about various work undertaken by the Commission in Australia, the inquiry on sexual harassment, economic modeling that you are talking about. I didn't very clearly understand what you covered in economic modeling, but I believe these are very interesting work that the Human Rights Commission is taking up. Now, based on the observation that the distinguished panelists have made, I have a couple of points to make. First is the mandate given by the constitution or laws to NHRIs. That matters a lot. And you generally NHRIs, as I believe as a judge, will confine to the jurisdiction given by their respective constitution and laws. But again, the percolation of human rights law into the domestic legalism gives a scope for expansion of activities by Human Rights Commission. Given the fact that I just bring the example from Nepal. The constitution of Nepal allows Human Rights Commission to have some role on the application and implementation of international instruments. If that is the role given to human rights instruments, that will enable Human Rights Commission to make headway into and examine activities that are not in consonance with the international norm and make recommendation. And what came up in the presentation was that the respective human rights institutions are playing the role of knowledge hub, knowledge institutions, creating knowledge, disseminating knowledge to the communities. This is one area where most of the institutions have worked, and that certainly pertains to gender justice, gender inclusion, and other activities that the human rights institution could take up. So, and if human rights institution work as knowledge hub, then probably media, and take media on their side, because dissemination of knowledge and will help media to understand the actual situation on the ground. And then that will create pressure to respective government to really implement human rights instrument and laws. This is one observation that I would like to make. And protection of human rights defender is a crucial issue, very crucial issue. And if you raise, as defender, if you raise human rights issues, there are chances of the defenders being framed in some legal disputes, or he'll fall in trap, he or she will fall in trap and be embroiled in litigation, or maybe some terrorist and anti-terrorist legislation or some sort of legislation. These are also happening in some of the jurisdiction in Asia Pacific regions. So protection of human rights defenders is a crucial issue for human rights institutions, and that will also help them to talk to the government regarding policy review. Another issue that comes to my mind is the how to do with the recommendation. What to do with the recommendation, and if recommendations are not implemented, do you really repeat it? How do you go about it? These are the major issues that human rights institutions are facing. There is no shortcut to this. There is no easy answer to this. But taking the larger community and through the media is one of the way out that they could look into. And finally, some issues have global significance, but there are local issues as well. Very painful issues. For instance, witchcraft. Witchcraft is not an issue, may not be an issue in Australia, but it is an issue in Nepal and India. And Chaupadi is a big issue in Nepal. So how do you handle these local issues as well? Local issues are not local issues per se. They may be local issues in their incidence, but not in impact. they have very huge impact for the society and protecting vulnerable people, vulnerable victims, survivors is a crucial issue that human rights institution could take up and also look into the policy review. This is what I would like to say from my position. Thank you.
Thank you all the speakers for the informative presentation. In recognition of the valuable insights shared by all the speakers, we'd like to present a token of appreciation. To offer this recognition, I'd like to invite on stage the Commissioner of NHRC Nepal, Honorable Dr. Surya Dungel. I'd like to request Honorable Commissioner Mihir Thakur to come on stage and offer this recognition to the chair of the session. I'd like to request the chair of the session, Dr. Anand Mohan Bhattarai, to offer this recognition to all our panelists. I request the speakers to come forward. Ms. Erika Powell. Honorable Commissioner Hari Kurniawan. Honorable Deputy Provedor Marilia Axidio da Costa. Thank you all the speakers. Now, before leaving for a tea break, we have a message for our distinguished dignitaries from NHRIs.